think the gates are open. We're live. Hey, we're starting to see some people pop in. Wow, look at that. Hey, good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be at. Gee whiz, there's a lot of people piling in here. Oh, this is great. Where's everybody coming from? Geez, I can't even, this is going, oh my goodness, I can't keep up. Well, shoot, I'm in sunny Redondo Beach, California, which is not far from Los Angeles, where it is anything but sunny today. It is cold, rainy, miserable. Oslo, Norway. Look at the Philippines, Vegas. Yeah, it must be like I need a lot of clocks to figure out where all these time zones are at. Hey, Esteban, look at all these people. Liverpool, Colombia, Berlin, Guten Tag, wie geht's? Bristol, Saudi Arabia, Montreal, bonjour, Florida. Hey, I grew up in Florida. Hopefully it's sunny there. Madrid, Minneapolis, Nigeria, Slovakia. Wow, this is awesome. This is great. Wow, we got a lot of people today. Pakistan, no kidding. India. I miss India. We did a unite there. I've been to a couple of unites there and had such a blast. Romania, wonderful. Netherlands, Mumbai, Morocco, Tasmania, Brazil. I think we have the entire world covered. This is incredible. As I mentioned, for those of you who just joined, I'm coming from you from Los Angeles, California, or at least just outside. We're having a miserable wet day. Philippines, 1 a.m. Thank you for staying up. Serbia, we're going to go like one more minute and we'll get started. Just let all you folks roll in. Pakistan, Lebanon, Brazil, Czech. I'm looking to my side. I can see the chat window over here if you're wondering why I'm looking off to the left. Uh, Bangladesh, 18 from Germany. Ja, vielleicht können wir ein bisschen Deutsch. I been terrible German. I am looking into the void. Someone says, hello from Florida. I grew up in Naples. Mir geht nicht schlecht. Das ist gut. We also have Oliver Schnabel on board. He's our senior product manager for URP, so he's going to be answering some questions in the background. You can ask him in English or German. Wow, all right, we're going to give it, since people are still pouring in, we're going to give it just one more minute. We'll go to 9:04, and then we'll kick it off. I can't see how many people are on from my end, but I'm going to guess 1 million. Okay, maybe not a million. Oh, Dankeschön for the good pronunciation. My parents were from Germany, so I got to learn it growing up. And it's always fun to go to Germany and practice my German. Takes a beer or two, I'm not going to lie, before it starts flowing off the tongue very well. But anyway, all right, cool. 9:04. Let's, oh, Turkey, look at that. Argentina, Miss Argentina. We're going to have to get back there soon. We used to do a developer day in Buenos Aires, one of my favorite places to go. Rotterdam, shoot, I'll be there in next month, 2 months. Portugal, Slovenia. Geez, okay, this is just a geography lesson for me today. Anyway, all right, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good middle of the night for all of you folks. Colombia, wonderful. Bogota's one of my favorite cities. Had developer days there as well. Can't wait to get back. All right, let's dive into this. So that's me. My name is Mark Schonagel. I run the field advocacy team here at Unity. I've been here for almost 10 years. It'll be 10 years at GDC that I began this wonderful adventure here at Unity. And yeah, so today we are going to talk all about the new universal rendering pipeline sample scene, and also just talk about Unity in general. And I'm going to show you some tips and tricks. But basically what I want to talk about mostly is just how the new UR sample scene was built, why we built it, what it's for. For those of you that don't know, URP and HDRP are our two offerings for the scriptable, say that, that's the scriptable render pipeline. And essentially, the URP is designed for everything from low-end devices, which, like an iPhone 6, which by now is pretty old. We're up to iPhone 15 already. So pretty much everything I'm going to show you here will run on everything from an iPhone 6, a Nintendo Switch, all the way up to the fastest consoles and PCs. And it just delivers better performance across that broad range of platforms than HDRP, which is really just targeted for high-end. So I'm just going to do a couple slides, and we're going to dive into the editor. Definitely want to show most of this in the editor today. So the previous URP sample scene was this construction site. It was pretty cool. It did a great job back in the day, but I used it a lot for look dev, just dropping objects in there and seeing what they look like. But really, as we invested so much more time into the functionality and the features of URP, we decided we needed to have a new sample scene to showcase all of that. So the new sample scene is great. It was released in November of last year, and it just has all the latest features for URP that the new sample scene does. So pretty much every new feature is inside of this scene. It's made up of 4 different little sub-scenes, which all have a very different style, which I'm going to show you how all that looks. And yeah, basically all the optimizations, all the new features are in this this new project, which we're looking at. And actually, you know what? I'm not going to show you that. So I guess I will. These are the 4 different scenes that are inside the project. We have the terminal, the garden, the oasis, and the cockpit. And rather than talk about them here, I'm going to just show you those in the editor. So that's it. Sit back and let's take a look. This is not designed for everybody to follow along. You're definitely not going to be able to keep up. So this will be recorded and you can watch it later, but I really just want to show you how this all works. And yeah, so just sit back and enjoy it, and let's get started. So going to show you how we get started all the way from scratch. This whole presentation is going to get a little bit more technical as we move along. So we're going to start off fairly basic and then move on to some technical stuff. So to start off with the new URP sample scene, I got to get the latest version. So I'm using 2022.3.19 LTS. And if you click on 3D sample scene URP, you're going to be greeted the first time. You're going to have a little button right here that says download template. So just click on that download. It's going to take several minutes depending on your internet connection. And from there, once it's downloaded, you'll be greeted to this. And basically, you're going to put in a project name, location, select your organization, decide whether you want to use cloud services or version control, and then hit create. I've already done that, so it's ghosted out because I haven't filled all this stuff in. But once you do that, after a medium amount of time, this Unity will pop up and you will be inside the sample scene. So it does take a little while. Once you hit create, you're going to get a progress bar. It's got to do a lot of uncompressing and compiling and doing all this and that. So just be patient. And then you're going to be greeted with a little pop-up here that says that there's tutorials. And if I close that up, we've got our little list of tutorials here, our viewport, inspector here. And you know what, to start off, I'm just going to give you a walkthrough of this, and then we're going to dive into how it was made, and some of the features that we're using. So one thing I want you to pay attention to is right now we're in the terminal scene. So that's this environment here. When I go into play mode, you're going to see it's going to load up several other scenes. And boink, you can see there we go. So we got the cockpit, oasis, and desert scene. I'm going to show you why it does that here in a second. But basically, now what I can do is just start to walk around and explore the beautiful new sample scene. So this is the terminal. This features a lot of really beautiful baked lighting, real-time lighting, and it's basically designed as a platform. You can see it's got some nice clouds up there for you to just drop some objects in here, do look dev. I'll show you how we do that. But then it's also like, the reason we call it the terminal is because, well, we've got these 3 terminal locations that we can go to. So I'll go to this first one here, and we just walk through, and I love this cool transition. I love this effect. As you get closer to it, these panels, you can see there's like a LED, kind of, if you took like a magnifying glass or something to your computer screen, you would see that it's made up of those little RGB dots, and that kind of forms this little display. And then what you can do is come over here, look at the Unity target. We get this cool transformation, this cool teleportation, and now we are actually in that environment, in that scene. So this is the oasis. The Oasis is designed for medium end hardware, so Nintendo Switch and above. Probably not going to work very good on like an iPhone 6 like the other ones will, but check that out. There's a beautiful lens flare in there. We've got all of this wonderful foliage, and I'm just going to run quick, just using the character controller. So WASD to move around, press shift to run. You can use a joystick if you want. Yeah, look at all the foliage is barely moving, if you can see that. This is all created with Speed Tree. If you're ever doing plants, Speed Tree is your best friend. We've got this beautiful lake right here, which we'll dive into. Check this tent out. When we walk into the tent, you're going to notice that the exposure changes, and we're using volumes to do that. I'll show you how all that works. So we can have these localized areas where we do different post-processing. I'm going to run back to the end here, and I'll show you how to teleport out of this room. So just look. The Unity logo pops up, keep staring at it, and boink, we get teleported right back to the teleporter or to the terminal. So I'm going to show you one more scene. I'll save this last one. I'll save this one for the very end of the presentation, and let's just dive into this one. And again, we get this really cool transformation effect. And if I move to those screens again, how cool. I just love that. That is such a wicked effect. And that's all done with Shader Tree. We'll dive into Shader Tree here in just a moment. But now if I, again, look at this one, we're now teleported into the room, and now I can go explore. And so this one here, beautiful stylized Japanese garden. We got realistic lighting, but a very stylized look to the scene. Look at that beautiful lighting there. We've got these, going here. We've got these little tea rooms. And this was definitely inspired by like the artwork from Overwatch. If you ever played Overwatch, that has that wonderful style. That's what we were going for here. Another little tea room. So again, just some wonderful places you can explore. We're going to dive into all this and take a look. So let me go back to the teleporter, and let's start to see some of the tools that we use to create this. And we should be back inside the terminal. Cool. So from here, I'm going to go and get out of play mode. And I want to talk to you about the first thing, which is the movement. So when I press play, I can move left and right. And right now, this is a bit slow for me. I'm not getting nearly enough head motion that I want. Every computer is different settings. So one thing you should do if you're feeling that you're not getting enough of that head control, terminal scene, select your FPS controller. And if you expand this out a bit, I've got my player capsule right here. And this is the standard Unity first-person controller. We have all these controllers for your run speed, your walk speed, and everything. I'm just going to change this rotation speed to something like, I've done this before, and I know it works good on my. So I'm going to set this to 3. And now when I press play, we get this, like so. And so now I got a much faster speed. Gee, I just got a warning about my internet speed, so hopefully you can still see what's going on. Anyway, let's go here, get to my project window. And if you look on the side, we have this. This is something that's exclusive to the, well, not exclusive, but this is something we've set up for the URP sample scene. And that is some tutorials. So the first thing I'll do is just start at the top. And it's got a little look here at our 4 different scenes. And then before you start. So what's it telling us in here? It is telling us to check our graphics and quality settings. I can show you that in a minute, but if I just step through these, again, it's telling you here, this is how play mode works, just some very basic education if you're completely new to Unity on how to navigate this scene. If we go down, click on terminal, and as I start to bump through these, it's just telling you what these scenes are for, why they were built. It moves the camera to different positions, so you can really just kind of explore this at your leisure and just sort of step through these, and it gives you an idea of here we're using LODs. And again, I'm not going to let you guys do this when you're at home, but just know that it all exists. And I'll walk you through a lot of the tutorial, but we don't need to go through all the descriptions of what the different projects do. So let's close that up, and we'll go back a level. And now under graphical features, we've got a whole bunch of little things here that we can step through, and I can show you. We'll actually go through most of these, and I'm going to show you some other stuff at the end, not covered in the tutorial, that I found very interesting to show you. So we'll just bump through some of these. First thing talks about, excuse me, graphic settings, quality settings. So I mentioned earlier that URP is designed for multiple platforms that scale everywhere from iPhone 6 all the way up to the latest consoles. So what it's asking me to do is to go into my edit project quality settings. So okay, edit project settings, and I'm on the quality tab. And these four quality settings right here, PC high, PC low, mobile low, if I change those just by selecting on it, you can see that my scene completely updated. Watch the difference between, say, mobile low to PC high. It's not crazy difference, but notice like we lose all the real-time shadows that we have here when we're on low settings, and we really don't get those back until PC high. Now you can create as many of these quality settings as you want and have completely different rendering results for each one of those. So one of these could be like Nintendo Switch, one of these could be like Android, however you want to set this up, that's all up to you. If we go down here, you can see, and actually watch this, watch how these dialog boxes change, like the values here per texture 256. Okay, we're doing that. So as you step through these different quality settings, these change. And then you also have your render pipeline asset. So if I double click on that and just move this over to my inspector, grab that, just move this over to my inspector view, these are the parameters for the render pipeline asset. So here I can say something super obvious like, okay, with this one, no shadows. So you click that. See how it turns blue here? That means it's recompiling my shaders. And sometimes, well, the first time you load up this sample project, it's going to do a lot of that. So just be patient. The faster your GPU is, the faster it's going to happen. But don't be alarmed if you start seeing these blue things pop up. It's going to change. It'll compile those shaders, and then it doesn't have to compile them again. So anyway, talk a lot about different quality settings, but basically, as you change the quality settings, you're able to change a whole bunch of things here inside inside your project. So this again, I'm not going to walk you through all this and read everything. You guys can do all this at your leisure, as I mentioned. But this is some of the stuff I was showing you, just some of the different parameters that you can have for your renderer. And that's it. Congratulations. Now, I've been a good boy and I've went through all the tutorials, so I've got the green checks next to everything. But the first time you do this, you won't. So you'll get a little reward. You'll have your little green check, and you can give yourself a little star. So volume framework. So I click on that. It takes me to the Oasis scene. And now we can talk about volumes. So what is a volume? Well, let me just expand some things here. So I've got two volumes in this scene, an outdoor volume and my tent volume. If I select the outdoor volume, press the F key, it will frame up that object. And there you can see this big green box. So that green box is the volume for overriding or adding post-processing features when we're inside of that volume. There's another volume, the tent volume, which is much smaller. And if I pick it up, you can see it there. And those are going to change the parameters when I'm inside the tent. So if you remember when I did that walkthrough, we had the higher exposure setting inside the tent. Well, let's do this. Let's do that again. And I'll show you how that's set up and why. Love that lens flare. We'll dissect that here in a bit. But let's just run, hold down the shift key to run. And let's just go to that volume. And there we go. Gets darker, gets brighter, nicely fades in, fades out. So I'm going to go here to the outdoor volume, which I'm inside of. And let's just look over this way. And a good little pro tip is when you're navigating the game view in play mode, so the game view is what you're going to see on your target platform with all the goodies turned on. Actually, look, if you let your mouse sit for a while, it goes into this little cinematic you just like kind of demo mode where it just shows you stuff. So can't let your mouse sit for too long in this, or it's a good thing. But it lost my focus of what I was showing you. So anyway, let's go back here. And if you press the escape key, I now get back control of my mouse to move around the UI. Left click again back in the game view, and now I've got control of my camera. Escape, and now my mouse is back to release. So good little tip there to edit stuff while you're in play mode. So I'm going to click on the outdoor volume, and you can see these are the overrides for the volume when I'm inside of it. So I can change the exposure if I want. I could change the fog density here, like so. Undoing all of these, we can change the start distance, how high the fog starts, and these are really easy to set up. So I'll just do that here. Let's do this. Let's go into the tent where the exposure changes, and I'll press escape, click on my tent volume, And this is basically the same, but look, now here the exposure is set to 3. So I could crank that up or down. Maybe go here to saturation, bump that down to black and white. And what's neat here is if I walk out, we fade from black and white to color, like so, just by changing the exposure or the saturation on the color adjustment. These are super easy to set up. So one thing I could do is just say add override, post-processing, and let's just add something that's really easy to see, something like a chromatic aberration. Do that, turn it on, crank the intensity up, and now you see that weirdness, that kind of cool, the chromatic aberration that renders on. I was kind of thinking maybe whatever in this T wasn't quite T, and they're, seeing a little bit funny. I don't know. There it is. It's simple to add these different overrides. There are a ton of them in here. You can really, really design these volumes to do all kinds of cool stuff. So you can have as many of these as you want. You can have volumes inside of volumes like we do. The main outdoor volume is outside of the smaller volume here, and that works just great. So cool. So let's go back to our tutorials. Let's click on next. We've covered all this. We adjusted the saturation. Great. Yep, we did some of that there too. Perfect and good. We messed with the exposure. So yeah, we covered all that. Excellent. Congratulations. Another star earned. Let's talk about baked lighting. So if you're unfamiliar with baked lighting, the easiest way I think to describe it is if I go here is to look at this wall. Okay, so this light right here is a real-time light. That means I can pick it up, I can move it around, I can change it, and it's going to update the scene immediately. That's great. If this light was never going to change, if this is the way it was going to look, no matter what was going on in my scene, I could just replace this texture map with a texture map that has this lighting information baked in it. It takes the original texture map, gets rid of it, replaces it with a new one, and then you have all this lighting in your scene, but for free. You're not using any GPU cycles to render it because you've just baked it into a texture. So we have a lot of that going on in here. Now, if we go through the tutorial, it tells me to go into my window. Where is it at? Rendering. And no, sorry, lighting. And yeah, there we go, render lighting. And the tutorial is telling me to go and clear my baked data so that you can see it disappear, and then we'll regenerate it. Problem is it takes a couple minutes. And so rather than wait for a couple minutes, I'm just going to let you guys do that by yourself. But just notice we would lose a lot of the baked lighting, and then we would see it with its original texture maps, and then click the bake button, and it will recalculate those textures and replace them automatically, which is great. So a little bit on baked lighting. Talk more about lighting here in a bit. The sky and the fog. So that puts us here inside of our beautiful garden. And if I just kind of look over here, and it's asking me to check out my skybox. So that's going to be right back into rendering lighting. And if I go to my environment, click on garden sky, actually double click on it, that will refresh it here in the inspector. And so there I can see it as a thumbnail. And I've got some parameters here to adjust my skybox, but kind of the ones that I want to show you are here. Things like the exposure, how cool that is. I love the way it actually adds that bloom over top of the geometry of the house, so you really see it. I don't know if that's a house or not. Yeah, I don't know what you'd call that. Maybe someone can tell me. I can rotate the texture map. This is an HDRI, so high dynamic range image, which gives us, allows us to actually light the scene with it. And I can do things like change the tint if I want to do something, drastic here as well. Skyboxes are great. Definitely, they can be your best friend, and I pretty much use them in every one of my projects. So that's a little bit on how the skybox works. And if we go to the next one, we already talked about fog, so I'll go ahead and skip this one. And hey, congrats. I just want to burn through these because I have a bunch of stuff to show you that's not in the tutorial. So here, let's talk a bit more about lighting. We have this light right here, and this light currently is a directional light. I'm going to turn that to spot and check it out. I got a little spotlight that I can move around. Notice as I get close to the ground, the energy, it's all physically based, so the lighting, it gets very intense there and sort of dies out there. I can increase the intensity here if I want. If I want to change those angles, I can grab them here, or you can hand back a little bit. And I got these wonderful little manipulators that I can use to change the spot as well. All of your temperature and color is all in kind of real world units. So we're adjusting the color temperature, and I have to really increase the intensity for us to see that. So there I'm adjusting the color temperature using traditional Kelvin values there. And again, things like intensity, I've already showed you. What kind of shadows we're rendering, that's all controlled here on this light. But I actually want to go and undo all of that to get back to my light that I had before, which is that nice directional light. So good stuff there. This light here, I was actually talking to you a little bit about before. And here's another little pro tip. I like to manipulate in a couple ways. One is if you hold down the right mouse button, and you can see that little eyeball appears, and it's got those 4 little buttons. That's obviously your WASD icon. So WSADs, forward, backwards, left, and right. But there's another way that I like to work, which is more coming from my DCC background of 3D content creation, which is I like to select an object, press the F key, and sometimes you have to press it again. And then now you've got your camera's interest locked on that object. So it's really easy to navigate and to admire your object when you do it that way. So anyway, that's not really what the tutorial is telling me to do. It's telling me to select the light. So right now I've got one of the LODs selected. So let me actually select the spotlight itself by opening the hierarchy here, selecting the spotlight. And here are my parameters for that. And so same thing I had before, but check this out. I've got these great little inner and outer deals I can move. And that was the same thing I was doing before with the manipulators. Grab those and those as well. So I'm going to leave those the way they were. But again, just another cool thing, real-time lights, super fast. And it still blows me away, like that we can adjust these lights in real time like this. Like I'm old, man. When I first started doing this was like a day to render, an image like that with that kind of lighting. So just to have that in real time is not lost on me, and it just looks so good. As I was working with this, at times I was wondering if I wasn't in HDRP. It's just so beautiful. So anyway, let's move on from that one. We got 2 more to cover, reflection probes. So in the tutorial here, it's going to tell you to work with this probe here, which is, it's going to talk about light leaks. I'm actually going to show you a different one because you can do that by yourself. Look at this one. So here's another reflection probe. And this one is over top of our water. And so what a reflection probe is, it basically it probes for a reflection. Now, what it does is it renders a texture map on this sphere and then uses that to control reflections. So all of the reflections that we see on the water are being generated by the image that this texture map is, or by the texture map that this render probe is creating for us, reflection probe. So right now, if you look at it, it's in baked mode. We can also switch this to real time, which does come at a performance cost, which will calculate a new reflection probe every frame. And it can do it very fast, especially if you use lower resolution settings. But for what we're doing here, it's not really important to capture the subtle swaying of these leaves, of these palm fronds, into the reflection probe to then project that onto the water. The water is all moving and everything already, so we can get away with a baked one, no problem. It's not going to look any different. I don't think anybody could point out the difference. So there, to save rendering costs, just get rid of, just use a baked one. So reflection probes are great. Use them all the time. And there you go. Congratulations, we're done. So last one on here is, let's talk about materials. So this is using the lit shader. URP uses physically based rendering. So PBR, not Pabst Blue Ribbon, which is, well, some of you might know what that is. It's a wonderful beverage here. So let's see, if we cruise on a little bit more, it's going to ask us about this teapot right here. So I'm going to go ahead and select this one. And it's telling me to, I don't know if you can see the emojis I get, but I got a few chuckles out of the PBR. So good stuff. So TSET01 matte is what I'm looking for on the teapot. So if I scroll down, a lot of these are just instances or copies of one another. So I'm going to expand this open. Let me get a little more real estate here. Expand that, and expand the actual pot mesh. And you can see we've got 3 LODs. I'll show you LODs a little bit later on a different mesh that you see it a lot better, but an LOD is just a simple level of detail. And what you can do is basically based on the camera's distance from an object, and you can define that by moving these handles here. As the camera gets farther away from this teapot, it's going to drop the number of polygons. It's going to introduce a lower quality, and that's just so you can have the scale. Also, you can just set it so that, you know what, if I'm on iPhone 6, I'm always going to be at the lowest quality, the lowest detail setting, because it just can't handle that much detail. Anyway, that's not talking at all about materials. But notice when I selected this, I had this probe appears right here that's completely blocking what I want to see. Here's a little trick. This is called a gizmo. There's lots of gizmos. Gizmos is this right here. These are these little things that live in your world, your lights, your decals. Here, if I fly outside, you can see a bunch of gizmos turn on and off. Sometimes, though, I usually keep them on, but every once in a while, you'll be working with something where it's like, hey, no, that gizmo is completely in my way. So a real quick way of shutting it off is just clicking that, and that turns them all off. If I open that a bit more, you can be very specific with the gizmos you turn on and off, or just do a global. We're done. Cool. Okay, so what we're tasked to do here in this little tutorial, oops, we didn't do it. Select that LOD, and it's asking me to open up the shader, and we can see we've got this metallic map. Now, if I double click on this, it's going to load up my image viewer. And this is it's a black and white image or grayscale of the metallic map. So this is going to allow me, this is UV mapped onto that teapot, and it's controlling where we're getting metallicness and we're not getting metallicness based on how amount of is. So if I were to just click on this and delete it, now it's replaced with a slider, and the entire object is getting a value between 0 and 1 of the metallicness, and then I can adjust the smoothness here as well, like so. I want a metallic shader on there, so let's just go ahead and do some undos there. Now, one thing I want to show you here while we're at it is I'm going to click on the edit button, and this will bring up Notepad. And look, this is shader codes. This is the lit shader, and you can see it's a bunch of code. So yeah, that's good, except for I don't program, so that's not good for me. So I like to use shader graph. So I'll show you shader graph in a minute, but just know that you can have a combination of coded shaders, or you can have shader graph shaders, which are wonderful. So let's see where we are here, and we'll talk about this, and then I'll show you some shader graph stuff. So I love this one. I'm going to zoom in a little bit closer. So I'm going to select this palm tree, and notice we got this orange outline. That just means your object's selected. This is another one of those things where sometimes I like that, sometimes I don't, depending on what I'm doing. Here, I'm going to just say selection outline is off, and then the object is still selected. I still can edit my parameters, but I don't actually see that outline. Another thing I can do is click on this little lock icon, like so, and then that locks this inspector to that tree, no matter if it's selected or not. So let me go and just turn back on my selections so I can show you that. Turn selection outline on. So yeah, you can see that now I still have my parameters that I can edit, but this object isn't actually selectable or selected. If I scroll down, this is the shader that is on these palm leaves. And check this out. We have subsurface scattering. Subsurface scattering. And if I uncheck the enabled, check out how much cooler that looks with subsurface scattering on. So subsurface scattering is, if you ever shined a flashlight underneath your hand, that's subsurface scattering. That's the way the light kind of goes through an object. Jade is something that people consider has a lot of subsurface scattering. And again, just to be able to do this in real time on each one of these leaves is wonderful. Notice I can enable the wind. Now, how is the wind on a shader? Well, let's take a look. I'm going to open up the shader graph for this. So I'll click on edit and double click on this. So this is the shader graph for those leaves. Don't let this intimidate you if you've never seen this. Shader graph allows you to program extremely complex shaders, just like the one I showed you written with code, except for with nodes. And while I can't do anything with code, I can make basic shaders with shader graph. And as people get more and more familiar, you can start to build some really, really cool complex shader graphs. But what's interesting here is the wind, the subtle motion of those leaves is all being generated by a vertex shader that is coded here. So per vertex subsurface scattering, whoever created this one did a great job of putting these boxes around and giving a brief little explanation of what's going on. I'm not going to have time to do that today, but just know that most of the shaders in here, you can mess around with shader graph and see what you're doing there. Cool, got a thumbs up on that one. Excellent. So let's go back here to our little, and I think that was the last. Yes, that's the last thing I wanted to show you of the tutorials. So let's talk about some stuff that's not covered in the tutorial, and just show you some other fun stuff you can do here with the project. So I want to go back to my terminal view. So we're going to go to presentation, click on terminal, and now we're back here. I can close this tutorial window up. It's taking a bit more real estate than I would like. So just click on these three dots, close tab, and then I will just kind of go back to here. although now I'm not in the terminal, but that's okay. You can also just load up the scene independently. One thing that's important to point out, and I showed it at the very beginning, is when we go into play mode, it loads up all the different scenes when we're in the terminal. That's good for a lot of things, but if you're doing standalone builds, you're going to want to load these individually. You're going to want to go into your scenes and load each project individually and then do a build for whatever your target platform is. If you're going to PC, you could probably build for all of them. I've done that. It's got a great little performance debugger that pops up. But let's just fly here into the terminal, and I want to show you how we can do a little bit of look dev stuff. So I've got a little folder here called Marked Stuff. Very impressively named. And I'll turn my gizmos back on so we can see, and I'll just take and drag and drop this statue there inside my project. So this is it's called a Laocoon Sons. It's a statue in the Vatican that we did some photogrammetry on. And just by dropping it in there with no shader on it, we already get this beautiful ambient occlusion. We get the nice shadows on here, and there's not even any materials on here. So this is just a place for you to drop your assets on, and it's a nice neutral lighting. You can kind of just really kind of see how that's going to look with all of its glory. But if I go into play mode or if I go into game mode, the object disappears. And so the reason for that is just a couple quick things you need to tweak. One, take it and put it under your root node. And second, change the layer to be on the layer of where it's at. So this one's in the terminal, so put it on the terminal. Yes, change the children, and it's always good to change the children. And now if I go into play mode, I can now walk up to it, admire it with all of the cool lighting turned on, all of the cool rendering effects that we see. So again, just a neat way of doing look dev. Yeah, so there you go. So I'm going to go and get out of play mode, and let's just go ahead and delete my scene. What are these things? What are these little rubber stamps? These are decals. And if I zoom out, and oh, you know what? I wanted to show this to you on somewhere else. Let's go here into my window, rendering. No, sorry. Let's go into project settings. And if I turn off, let's grab this guy here. And I'll double click on that. Cool. If I go here and turn off my, where'd it go? What am I looking for? Oh, shoot, wrong place. Let's select it on here. There. So if I turn off my decals, so I can set it so that this particular, even though I'm on PC high, maybe I don't want it to render decals. So it's a little subtle, but see these little splotches? We're using decals to do those. And I'm going to show you a much better example of decals in a second, but this is where you could turn them off globally. They're quite nice. So anyway, let's go to another one of these projects. Let's go to the garden. And I got a lot to show you in the garden. So nope, don't save that. Cool. And let's go into the garden. Fly into what I'm looking for. And this one's got just a ton of these decals. So what is a decal? This shows it a little bit better than those than the terminal does. Watch this. If I grab this decal all by itself, look what it's doing. I'm able to paint, literally spray paint petals. Now, if you think about this from a 3D art perspective, this is huge. Like, I remember doing 3D art and trying to get my texture map to spill over on multiple objects. I don't know if you can see all the emojis I'm getting, but I'm being flooded with hearts and love. Oh, that's great. So basically you just grab a decal, put a texture on it. There's the texture map for it, just some petals, and you just spray paint your object. So rather than have to have these petals on the texture map here, have petals on the texture map here. Now, if I had them on this one, then I'd have to have a unique texture map compared to that one. So that would just eat up memory. That sucks. So now I can just use, oh my God, I cannot believe the amount of love that I'm getting for decals. That's awesome. Look at this. I can scale those. I can have as many of these as I want. They're super efficient. And they just do a really, really cool job of adding that wonderful little detail all over our scene. And we're using them all over. All the scenes here in the Oasis scene, the rock ledges, they're all covered with decals as well. All right, now you guys are just spamming me with love. I hope you can. I can't see what you guys see, so hopefully you're seeing all this all this stuff. You're killing me. All right, let's do this. Let's go into play mode, and we'll run out here real quick, and let's just take a look. Oops, sorry. Let's go over here. And we got these lovely little falling petals. Now, those aren't the ones that are accumulating on our decals, of course, right? I'm dying of the spam of love. You guys are great. All right, let's do this. Let's go. I'm not even going to be able to adjust my inspector now. I've got so much stuff going on with hearts and laughter. So, all right, cool. Let's go and open up our VFX. I'm going to click on cherry petals. And look, now I can't edit my parameters. Good grief, you guys have spammed me too much. All right, let's do this. Let's increase our max particles to like 20,000. And let's open up our emission and crank this up to like 1,000. And let's just spam our forest here now with just tons of falling particles. Again, super efficient. I love particles. Particle effects are so much fun. And these run on all the different platforms. So, you know, it's a bit too much. So let's just go ahead and undo that. But that's some of the fun stuff you can do with the effects on the particles. So what else can I show you in here? Let's go and just stop that. And let's talk about some of the other lights in here. So we got this light here, and we've got this lantern over here. Let's go to one of the lanterns first, like this guy. All right. Oh, no, that's the same one. What am I looking for? There it is. That's what I want. One of these. So these two lights here. Actually, this one's better. Let's do this one. All right, cool. So if I select this light and I expand it open, you can see we actually have two different light sources inside making up that lantern. The first one is the core, and I'm going to hide my gizmos like I did before. And if I turn them on or off, look at that. That's the main light. And the second one is the cookie. The cookie isn't something you eat, but it's the cookie cutter. It allows me to use an image map like this one here to control how the lighting effect is going to happen. And so if I crank up the intensity of the cookie, you can see exactly what it's doing, something like that. Combining these two lights gives us this cool little look. And I'm gonna have to go into play mode to show this off. But if I go into play mode and we zoom out to our lantern again, can't remember which one I had selected. I think it was this one over here. Yeah, so if we look right in here, there's a little bit of flickering going on because, and look at these values. See these values, the intensity values changing slightly. We've got a little bit of action going on there. So we've got a couple scripts on here, which, oh, I went into automatic play mode. There we go. So if I increase like the jitter, you can kind of really see what that cookie is doing now, making that obviously way too extreme. Same thing with the intensity. I could crank that intensity up of the jitter so we get a much more noticeable jitter. And two lights in combination. Let's go ahead and leave play mode. And I'm going to go over to another light. Let's go to this one here. Select this guy. Actually, you know what? I think this one here, you'll see it a little bit. Ooh, I got another pro tip. When you're in, when you hold down your right mouse button, use the scroll wheel, and that will lower or increase how fast you're walking or moving. So there it's nice and slow. Crank that up, and we got to where I was before, where it's, you know, just I'm all over the place. So let's just go down to like 0.2 or something. Fun little pro tips. All right, so here's another light. Look, this one's got this cool little thing here going on. So if I select it, here's another neat pro tip. You know, I was talking about locking the inspector. This is something I learned just today. I'm always learning something, so hopefully I'll teach you something too. If you right-click on any object and you go down to properties, look, it brings up a inspector that's already locked. So now I can select something else, and this doesn't refresh. So I'm only working at, I think, 1080p right now just for performance. But when I'm on my big monitor, geez, I have Windows up open all the time, but I'm always using that little lock icon. So yeah, that now see all those little happy thumbs up and oohs. That was me this morning when someone goes, hey, you know, you can just right click and hit properties, right? Man, I've only been using this for 10 years. How would I supposed to know that? Actually, I think it's a new feature, but anyway, good stuff. So let's close that up and let's select this point light. And I'm going to turn it off and realize that, look, the light isn't that white thing at all. That's just a white box. The light is what we had before. Same kind of a deal. We got a point light. If I increase the intensity, you can see what the light is doing, but it also has a cookie. So I'm going to, again, not eat them. That's the cookie for this, what that one looks like. And let's just drop a different cookie on so you can really see the difference. Boink, there you go, different cookie. So these are super effective. They're super believable, very inexpensive on a rendering performance to actually use those. So that's pretty cool. What else did I want to show you in here? Is there anything? I'm just looking at a couple notes that I wrote down. Oh yeah, let's look at this. This is cool. So forward plus, forward, deferred. different rendering pipelines. So we've added for this version of URP a better version of forward rendering. So rather than having the limitation of 8 lights before, you can have a lot more lights. A really cool way of actually, you want to see something else cool? Watch this. Something a lot of people don't know. If you have your render debugger open and you go into play mode, this appears, your stats, and you get real-time stats of what's going on. But as soon as you leave play mode, it completely disappears from there. So you got to know that one. So that's a little trick as well. So if I go here to my material overrides, I'm going to tell it to go into light complexity. Now, it will have to rebuild your shaders if you haven't done this yet, but this is with forward plus, and this is showing me how many lights are affecting each one of these tiles. So 4, 3, 2. If I go here to my project settings and go to the top, let's go to settings. And this is what I was adjusting before, this PC high renderer. Let's go ahead and go from forward or forward plus to forward. And look at that. Look how much more expensive this is to render using forward versus forward plus. So it's much more efficient, allows us to get rid of that the light limitation. And these render debugging modes, man, play around with these. There's so much cool stuff you can learn by switching to some of these different render modes to really learn more about what your scene is doing, how to debug it. So let's go over here real quick. And I want to talk again quickly about quality settings. So let's go to Edit, Project Settings, and what was I looking for? I just want to change these settings. So we're on mobile, we're on PC high right now. So what we see here is the highest level, the highest LODs, the highest rendering quality. Watch what happens when I switch to mobile low. Boink. Look how much less geometry there are between those two. I mean, it still looks really good. This is iPhone 6 quality. Can you believe that? And then this, we get more foliage. We get the decals. We lose decals with iPhone 6 or the lowest settings just because I unchecked that decal box. Kind of like, like here, the decals are on, but if I uncheck it, has to recompile the shader really quick. And then now we don't have the decals. Turn the decal back on. And you can see it only does that shader recompile once. So you can kind of experiment that, let the shader do its thing, and you're good to go. So that's cool. One more thing to show you. Let's take a look at, let's go back to the terminal. Oh, real quick, if you want to get to your tutorials again, just click on tutorials, show tutorials. It'll do a quick little flash, and now you got your tutorials back. So I'm going to go into my terminal scene. No, don't save any of my changes. Gonna press play, and let's quickly run to the corridor and take a look at the last one in here, which is the cockpit. And again, cool transition. I love these monitors, and I'm just gonna show it one more time because I just freaking think that little LED effect is so cool. You can play around with that with Shader Graph. I was picking apart that one the other day. It's very cool, very fun. So let's look in here. And for this one, you just sort of sit enjoy the show. This is designed for VR. This builds great on a Quest 2, so a standalone VR headset that's not tethered to your computer, so it doesn't quite have the power of, say, like an Index with a RTX 4090 on it or something. So this is a very stylized look as well. One of the things I love about this sample scene is the 4 completely different styles of quality. Look, there's toon shading going on there. You can see the pencil outline or the ink outline on all of the objects in the scene. And I'm just looking around, and this whole thing is just unfolding. It's like kind of like a cool Star Wars sort of an adventure, but obviously all cartoony, all stylized. You could compile this for VR and just sit around, look back, and enjoy the show. One thing I do want to show you in here is if I leave play mode, and let's just go and load that scene all by itself. The cockpit, and just going to go here to my game view, grab window, sequencing, timeline, and let's just drop our timeline into here and select this guy. So this entire project, this entire scene inside the sample is all done with timeline. So if you're unfamiliar with timeline, it's a way for you to do animation, audio, everything in kind of like layers like you would do in an editing system. So for instance, the entire worm ship killer transition is this here. So if I move this, it's going to change when that happens inside your project or whatever. So you can dive into these. Some of these are nested inside a nest. There's a lot of stuff going on with Timeline. If you haven't played with Timeline, definitely take a look at it. But yeah, this one is all done through Timeline. And yeah, just another cool little example. So anywho, that's pretty much what I wanted to show you today. Probably a mouthful and a lot to digest. So don't worry, everyone who is attending or has registered will get a copy of this recording, so you can check it out at your leisure. And then I want to show you just a couple things. If you want more information, there are two great YouTubes out there that go in a little bit different direction than what I did. So first is cross-platform game development with the new URP sample scene, which Jonas presented. This was at GDC last year, and then earlier at Unite, also last year, but towards the end of the year at Unite in Amsterdam, which is one of my favorite cities. So all of you who I saw are coming from the Netherlands, love your city. We have this one here, which takes you with a little bit more in depth as well. So man, thank you for all the love. That's awesome. I appreciate it. And yeah, so with that, I don't know if any more questions are going to be answered. I had this whole big plan of having a computer next to me, which I was going to look over and read all these questions, but there was so much stuff pouring in, I realized I couldn't keep up. So hopefully all the questions were answered. Man, you guys have been a fantastic audience. I cannot ever remember seeing so many little hand and love gestures. So appreciate you all. And you know what,
I think, Mark, we still have like some minutes, so we could answer
yeah.
some questions live, maybe. So
Oh yeah, I forgot we're going to do that. That's Oliver. Thank you, Oliver. Got a little carried away.
that's good. We still have like 9 more minutes, so maybe we can try to answer some of these.
Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
Let me see. So first, there were like a lot of questions about VR. I tried to answer some of these. So currently, the cockpit environment is made for performance on Meta Quest 2 or similar devices. So that's basically like it uses custom shading. So basically, no lighting at all. It's just done through a shader graph. So there is also no post-processing. So it's really like minimal effects that are used to have like optimal performance there. We are currently working on updating it a little so that it's easier to directly to deploy to XR, so that you need to manually install like all the XR packages and so on. And there's also like I think a bug with stereo rendering of the custom skybox. So we are looking into this to also update the cockpit so that it works out of the box, but performance-wise, it should already be good for VR.
And I'm gonna experiment with getting it working in this week. I don't know if everybody can see. I've got one of these fancy Vision Pros. Woo!
Nice. Yeah, this would be
Anxious to
awesome
see the
to
cockpit
get
running in that.
Yeah, that would be great. I also responded to like several questions. Let me find some here. Some questions about block shaders. Yeah, so block shaders is like is a project we are actively working on. It's making good progress. It's not coming in Unity 6, but in like in the next direct release. So we will see when we can ship it. So we want to probably have like first like preview modes then later. Then there is a question about shader graph versions of the URP standard shader. So that's not something we currently have. We have like some samples, and there are some GitHub repositories where you find like a lit shader of shader graph, but it's not something we currently support, unfortunately. There was a question if it's using SSAO, what you showed. I guess in the terminal you dropped like an asset, so that's probably like you saw like the good shadows there. This was SSAO, as I assume. There was also a question about auto exposure. So we are actively working on this to get auto exposure into URP. Mark showed like a nice workaround that is used in the template here. When you go into the Oasis scene, into the tent, there is like this volume that is changing the exposure. That's like a neat trick that you can use. Then there were like a lot of questions about performance on mobile. So like the Oasis scene is optimized for iPhone 8 or above, while Terminal and Garden should be running with 30 FPS on iPhone 6s. So that should be good. And the cockpit, as I mentioned, is Meta Quest 2 and above.
I forgot I wanted to show you guys the cool lens flare and this water shader. So Oliver, you can just keep answering and
Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
tinker
that's
around here
good.
a little bit.
There was also a question about LODs in the demo. So like a lot of the assets are actually LOD'd, so you can use like them right away. So like in Oasis, the rocks have different LODs, and the garden scene, you will also find that all objects have 3 LOD levels, so they should be good to use right away.
This is the water shader, which again is using the reflection probe, ray march reflections. And again, you can dive into this too, but I just love some of these shaders on here. They're really cool and performant for sure.
Can you show the lens flare effect again? Like there was also a
Yep.
question how to create it. So it's
Oh yeah.
probably
So
like an
lens flare is
object.
super easy. I got my main light. It's a directional light. You just put the lens flare component on it, and that's it. And then if we take a look at our lens, and look, actually, I love this too. See the way when it goes behind the palm tree, we get that very realistic flickering. Actually, like went out and sort of tested that a few months back. Not for this scene, but I was just doing some little bit of research on how lens flares work, and yeah, that's just this enable occlusion. So if I turn that off, that just does not look right at all, and especially when you're going through something with those little tiny fine leaves like we have on the palm tree. So when I turn that occlusion back on, we get that nice flickering just like we should. And again, I can change the intensity to something ridiculous, the attenuation if I want. So, all these wonderful effects just add up. Look at the decals on this here too. If I select, look at all those decals. And if I just turn them off, let's turn my gizmos off. And if I turn the decals on and off, look, we're using them just to add just that subtle little look. I mean, it is subtle, but it just adds so much to that. So that whole decal thing is freaking awesome. Love it.
Yeah, about like Quest, there was a question if lens flares would work on Quest 2. I'm actually not 100% sure. I would assume not, honestly, because it's probably like a weird effect to have in VR.
Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna. I got that Vision Pro. I'm gonna test that. That's a great test. I mean, I'm curious about that as well.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure about the implementation, so we need to double check.
Was very interested in lens flares for some reason a couple weeks ago, but I did not test in VR.
There was also a question about Forward Plus on mobile VR. So right now, the recommended path for mobile VR is basically Forward. We're looking always into optimizing this, but untethered VR is a very limited what you need because you need to render so many frames and also twice, as you know. So that's the challenge there.
If anyone ever has to make a tree, please look at Speed Tree. It's just wonderful. I need a palm tree. I need it to be old. I need to have a bunch of dead branches, and then I want it to age over time. Like all the foliage is all done with Speed Tree. I mean, it's got basically every plant you can imagine, and the just the quality and the way you can dial it in. You can actually learn a lot about how trees grow. I was very impressed with that too. Just some of the like there's math behind it, like how trees separate and how branches separate, and it's just fun to use a little slider to age a plant or a tree and just see it get old. Yeah, different weather effects on it. Yeah, they're cool. I mean, look at that.
There was also a question about like 2D, so URP 2D. So we also have like a quite recent example on 2D. It's called Happy Harvest, and you find it in the asset store. So it's like a sample project that leverages URP and with the 2D packages. So this should be a great resource. Maybe we can drop it also in the chat. So just search for Unity Happy Harvest, and then you should find it. So it's quite recently, and maybe Mark can cover this in the future as well. So not sure if
Yes,
you
well, actually, I
also.
want to, as I was messing around with the shader tree, I thought, geez, man, this would be another great webinar. Is just focus on some of the shaders in here. So yeah, there's a lot still we can do. I only had an hour, and I know it was probably drinking water through a fire hose with as much as I showed, but I just wanted to cover as much as I could, and we'll dive into this further in future webinars. So shoot, we're at time. Everyone, really appreciate you all. Been a great audience. Hope we answered some questions, had some laughs, learned some stuff. So download the sample scene, give it a try, and yeah, let's have some fun with Unity.
Awesome, Mark. Great work. Thanks,
Thanks, guys.
everyone.
You're all killing me.